Hi, this is HL from the Hollywood Liberal, and it's time once again for the Hollywood Liberal's NBC News Raw video blog. We're coming to you every Monday morning here from Hollywood with the latest news and what's going on the HollywoodLiberal.com, which is our blog. And we're here every Monday morning, and let's get to the news. John McCain was in Iraq this weekend. He was there trying to show people that his troop surge is working, in which Bush sent 21,000 more soldiers over to Iraq. Of course, this is against the will of the American people and the Congress, but they're doing it anyway. And McCain is trying to prove to everybody, of course he's running for president as well, is trying to prove to everybody that Iraq is safer. He came out with a statement that said that it's safe for people to walk down the streets of Baghdad, even a white person, a Westerner. There's no fear anymore, everything is fine. One little problem though, while McCain was there over the weekend, 6 more U.S. soldiers died and over 500 people, 500 Iraqis died in sectarian violence in the worst weekend since the troop surge started. So apparently McCain is looking a little foolish right now. Things are not getting better over in Iraq, they're getting worse. There was a story that we ran a video from CNN in which Wolf Blitzer was talking to a reporter who was on the streets of Baghdad. He said that McCain must be living in Wonderland if he believes that, because you could hear explosions and gunshots going off around him while he was talking. He said that a Westerner wouldn't last 20 minutes on the streets in Baghdad, and that McCain is obviously either mistaken or, you know, maybe telling a little fib here and there, because that's what Republicans do. Meanwhile, the violence continues in Iraq, and Democratic members of Congress have said that they're going to try and do everything they can to continue putting the pressure on Bush to start some kind of a troop withdrawal. Of course, Bush has already promised to veto the bills that the Congress have passed to fund the war, which would also call for the troops to start coming home. Barack Obama this weekend said in a statement that if the vetoes come through, Congress will go ahead and fund the war without any provisions to bring the troops home, because he doesn't want to play ball with the troops, as he says. So once again, the Democratic majority in Congress is going to bow to Bush's will. He's going to get his way, the troops will keep getting money, the war will go on with no end date in sight. Elsewhere in the news, a member of Bush's inner circle has turned on him and denounced him. Matthew Dowd, who was one of Bush's chief campaign strategists in the 2004 election, has turned around now and said that he no longer trusts Bush, that he can't stay behind him. He said that Bush is ignoring Congress, he's ignoring the American people, they need to come up with some kind of a plan about Iraq, and that Bush will not do anything about it. This is the first member of Bush's inner circle, as they call it, to actually come out against him, and maybe it will start to convince even more people that Bush is on the wrong track, this country is on the wrong track in regards to the war, and that something needs to be done to turn things around. The public opinion keeps building and building, and eventually something's going to have to turn Bush's feelings around and get him out of this war. Of course, that would stop him from profiting through the military-industrial complex and the oil industry, but something just needs to be done, and we'll have to see what happens with that. Another story we're following right now is the Rudy Giuliani election campaign is being threatened to get dragged down even further into the mud by the whole Bernie Kerik fiasco. Kerik, as you may know, was the New York City police commissioner during the time that Giuliani was the mayor of New York. Giuliani appointed Kerik, and he was a longtime friend of his. Federal prosecutors this week have said that Kerik will likely be charged with several felonies involving kickback schemes and other things that happened around the World Trade Center disaster in 2001, and other things that Kerik was involved in while he was the commissioner of New York City Police. Of course, this is going to look bad on Giuliani, who's Kerik's friend and who brought him along and brought him in and got him in as the commissioner of the New York City Police Department, even though he had no experience in that area. Now, you may remember Bernie Kerik as the guy who was taking an apartment on the site of Ground Zero, which was supposed to be used for workers, the Ground Zero repair workers, to have a place to relax while they were on their breaks. Kerik took this apartment and he was using it to have sex with his mistress while all this was going on. Of course, none of this looks any good right now, but what are you going to do? It's too late. Bernie Kerik is dragging Rudy Giuliani down into the mud. And in my opinion, that's a good thing, because that's the last guy we want for the President of the United States. He'll turn this country into a gulag. Also, yet another Republican has called for the resignation of our Attorney General, Alberto Gonzales. Representative Terry Lee of Nebraska, who's a 5-term congressman, has said that he previously was behind Gonzales, but he can no longer support him. He thinks that Gonzales should resign now. This is at least the 3rd Republican that said that. The heat stays on Gonzalez and the firing of 8 federal prosecutors, which it now looks like the reason it was done was to protect Bush during the 2004 election, to try to get the Democrats indicted on things that the prosecutors did not feel were worthy of being moved on. So 8 federal prosecutors were fired. Gonzalez was involved. He's denied it. There's all kinds of legal wrangling going on in Washington. Bush says he's still behind him, but the heat continues to grow on old torture boy, and it's just a matter of time perhaps, although I believe it'll be quite a while before it finally steps down. Look what happened with Donald Rumsfeld. People were calling for his head for years before he finally got the axe. So we'll continue following this story also on the Hollywood Liberal. Another story we're following right now, Henry Kissinger has come out and said that the Iraq War is unwinnable. Of course, Kissinger was involved in Vietnam and the secret bombing of Cambodia back in the Nixon administration, and if Kissinger says it's time to get out, then you ought to listen to him, because he knows what's going on in terms of war and peace and starting wars for profit. And if Kissinger says that it's over, then it must be over. So Bush should listen to old Henry and start doing something. And in our final story, we ran a story this morning about a British man who's been finally freed from Guantanamo Bay prison after over 5 years of being tortured and interrogated. The man, who's a British citizen, was taken off of a plane because of what was called a suspicious device. It turned out to be a battery charger, and he got shipped off to Guantanamo. He was Arabian descent, but from Britain, shipped off to Guantanamo for over 5 years, tortured, interrogated. They finally let him go because the British government was doing everything they could to keep him out. He said that the U.S. government was giving him shoddy treatment even till the end. Even when they were taking him to the plane to fly him back to Britain, they had to handcuff him, put him in earmuffs, blindfold him, and hustle him off to the plane the way they do over there at Guantanamo, screaming and yelling the whole time. Put him in the back of a hot bus with no water, and treated him like a prisoner right up till the time he got on the plane and went home, because he was no longer considered a prisoner because he hadn't done anything. This is the kind of thing that goes on in Guantanamo Bay every day. It needs to be closed down. Of course, Bush has secret prisons in other countries that they fly people to in an extraordinary rendition to try to make it look like they're doing something when in fact they're doing nothing, because they want the war to go on forever. Okay, well, that's about it for now. We'll be following these stories and much more this week on thehollywoodliberal.com. So come on by and check us out, and we'll have lots of great stuff, and we'll see you next week. Bye.